I played Cyberpunk 2020 instead of D&D. While everyone else was playing D&D, I was playing Cyberpunk. And then, you know, my first crack at a novel was
that I need.
I forgot the book. Is it books and authors?
Yes.
There we go. We're up on the screen. So obviously it's a couple seconds still. I guess I'll introduce. Hey all, it's Nerds and Novels episode like 4, 5, 3. I can't remember now. No, honestly, got truth. Myself and Aaron Presley here are
Hello.
Luke Newman on his books, legendary series of Fayne.
Hey everybody.
That is a large mug.
I didn't want to have to refill in the middle of this, so.
Yes, so legendary author. 2 novels so far. You're currently working on the 3rd one, correct?
I am working on the 3rd, aiming for a spring release, so hopefully.
Ooh, exciting.
Yeah.
Like you left me totally hanging.
That's how you sell more books, right?
I know, but you know what? So tell us, I guess introduce yourself. Tell us about your background, how you got into being an author, motivation.
Okay. Sure. So I'm Luke Newman. I don't even know where to begin. As far as writing, I've always been a storyteller, always been writing.
Okay.
I remember getting in trouble because I'd be up at midnight, 1 o'clock in the morning on an old word processor, like clunk, 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 clunk in the house while my parents were trying to sleep. That's how old and how long I've been writing. So like any, good author, I went ahead and did something else with my life for 20 years, and I joined the Army. Yeah, right. And then spent 20 years in the Army. Good stuff. Gave me everything that I've got now. But when I retired, I decided that I wasn't going to work for anybody else. I was going to go back to school full time. I'm currently working on my BA, and have been only pre-accepted because I can't apply for it until next semester, but an accelerated master's program at University of Baltimore. Thank you. Master of Fine Arts in Fiction and Publishing Arts. So I'm extremely excited to start educating other people at the college level on writing and everything. But I've always been a storyteller. Influences were obviously D&D growing up, Tolkien. I loved the Shannara Chronicles. So when that TV, right, when that TV show came out, I was pretty amped. And I like what they did with it.
I actually didn't start reading those until I saw the TV show.
Yeah.
I refused to watch the TV show until I read them.
So he was actually one of my influences, not necessarily in content and style, but in how he approached writing, so that anybody could read it. Him and we'll go with J.K. Rowling. It's a young adult series that everybody ended up loving. Phenomenon. Everybody as the royal, not necessarily literally everybody. I just want everybody to be able to enjoy the story. I think they're pretty rad, so I put them out there. And the reason I published this story first, I've been holding this here for too long. Hang on. The reason I published this one first was because, so I hooked up with a friend online and we kind of discussed some concepts and everything. Catherine Poach, she helped kind of co-create the world that everything existed in the Legendary series. And we threw some concepts back and forth. And from there, the story started to develop. I would read them to my 2 stepdaughters at night for bedtime stories. So as I'm reading them the stories, they wanted to help create characters. So they created, those of you who have read, they created Alex and Skylar.
Mm-hmm.
And one night when I was reading, my youngest said, well, maybe Skylar can get kidnapped and rescue her. I stopped, and she was 9 at that point. And I said, why would you want your character to be the damsel in distress when she can be the hero? And the look that came over her face, and I get emotional when I talk about it, but the look that came over her face was, nobody's ever told me that I could be a hero before. So I was like, shit. Yeah. So I was like, shit, I got to write. This is the one that I got to put out first. And that's where it came from. And
sold.
Yeah. And I decided I don't want to wait. First of all, I don't want to be told no and that my story sucks. So I didn't even try to go traditional publishing. I just self-published, and
that's awesome.
Put one out every year since I retired. And I'm on track to do that again for the 3rd year. So
that's awesome. Well, to introduce the first book, it starts off like really like it starts off like you're just hit in the face with action. Like starts off with the Horde. They're about to take over. And is it Aaron Moore?
The Oren Moore, yeah.
Oren Moore. Okay.
Oren Moore, yeah.
Oren Moore. And is that just the name for the king? Because that's obviously not his name. And like that's just what they call it.
So the way that works, and this will all get explained as the story progresses. You give bits and pieces as like that.
The beginning of each novel starts with like you're basically flashing back to.
Right.
Is it, and you pronounce it Fayne, correct?
Fayne, yes.
Fayne.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's flashing back at in basically how the first novel starts off. For those of you who have not read it yet, and I suggest you do because it's really good. They're being invaded by the Horde, and it's kind of they know that they don't have any other option. They're basically going to be destroyed. They understand that they have one option to save everybody, but even the king, the Aaron Moore, knows that even that's not a guarantee. So he wants to get his queen and his young daughter, she's 2, out of there as fast as possible. And he tells his what is it called? Can't remember. His name is
at the beginning, the advisor.
Yes, the advisor. That's what I was looking for.
Yeah, Grindel.
You know that he's gonna use this secret weapon. I'll tell you what it's called. You have to read the book. But basically, they're preparing to get his child and his wife out of there. And he tells the queen basically, he goes and he tells her, and he knows that there is no chance. So he tells her that she's leaving and going to the north. And it's this scene where they're invaded. They're trying to get her out of there. Then this young kid, we say kid, but how old is Dimitri?
He's about 15.
15.
So yeah. He's young. He's a squire. Yeah. He's
a squire to the sergeant of arms. He's been training, for however many years to be in the king's guard, and he's just a squire. And he's given a sword and said, "It's all on you now." And he's got to get this queen out of here, but he's so dedicated to it because he knows, and gets the queen and the daughter out, and like he gets in. They get attacked as they're leaving, and the queen falls, and it's like this emotional roller coaster for them because he doesn't get a second to stop because he has to keep going. He doesn't get to process anything, and so he just goes, and he gets injured himself really badly, like from the way it's that would probably put most for a 15-year-old. That's pretty drastic.
Yeah.
For anybody, I think it was pretty drastic.
He gets cut across, sliced across the face, and like it's the queen falls and basically makes him promise that he's going to be responsible for this 2-year-old princess. This 15, you have a kid being responsible for another child, and it's the start of that, and then you go straight into this girl named Fayne, who's growing up, and she's a messenger, and she rides this lizard named Swift.
Yeah.
Yes. So
And-
I'm tripping out a little bit because you're telling me my story and nobody's ever done this before. So this is really rad. Keep on. I'm
well,
loving it.
the idea for Swift.
Yeah.
Idea for Swift. Where did that originate? Because obviously, I mean, it's very unique, white and gray. So he's very rare. One, it's rare to have it's called a Bitnar. That's what it's called.
A Manton.
Manton.
Yeah. So it's the inspiration of the design is kind of a giant lizard, kind of cross between, I don't know, a raptor without eyes, and it's got these mantis-like claws on the front.
Yeah, it's like a lizard mantis.
And it's weird. And I guess the inspiration was she is so non-traditional when it comes to your fantasy tropes and all of that. I'm going to develop her even more to be even more non-traditional, but she couldn't just ride a horse.
Well, yeah. I mean,
so I had to come up with something, and I illustrate using a 3D program, 3D art program, and a lot of the designs I can purchase the designs and then tweak them to suit. And I found this one, and it ended up being Swift, and I just loved it. And I thought I scaled it up so that she could ride on it, and the concept just kind of continued. You'll learn about her relationship with him more as the books go.
Yes, David, I can. I'm gonna spoil the shit out of book 2. Just so you know, I'm spoiling the shit out of it.
Nice.
I honestly loved it. Like I don't think having Swift in there.
Whole different book series.
But having Swift in there, it just kind of fits her. It fits her personality. It really does. It really does fit her like whole viewpoint on everything. Not really like even. And it's everything is so. It's not really fast paced, but it's very fluid. It's continuous, and it's kind of fast paced in some areas, but it's not in a bad way. You know, like because it's a lot going on in a short amount of time that you have this. And so like she's a messenger. She's a common girl, and she's a messenger, and no idea that she is a princess at all. And then she has to go rescue Uncle Dimitri from the alehouse because he's a drunk.
Always.
Oh, he's a drunk. And I mean, you know, a 15-year-old kid who got his face cut open and, you know, his eye damaged and, you know, responsible for a 2-year-old girl and saw his kingdom fall and has no idea if anybody's alive, no idea what's going on. The last thing he saw when you're reading the beginning of the first book is, you know, on a horse trying to get away, and there's this huge dragon that the king's riding. That's a secret weapon, and he doesn't even know if that worked. You know, he doesn't even know if the dragon it was successful. You know, he has no idea. Don't raise your eyebrows, because I need to know that. And so, you know, and she's just a normal girl, completely normal, just a messenger, and she helps her drunk Uncle Dimitri.
She has a couple friends.
She has a couple friends, and they have a little shit of a merchant son that they got to deal with. And it's the blacksmith apprentice or journeyman, as she corrects Caleb, is Trent, and he's her best friend, and he helps her with everything, and she, you know, they're getting ready for this. He's getting ready for this test of the guild, and she's fully supportive, and they get ready to do this test, and of course, you know, Caleb enters, and Caleb's like the Richburn. merchant. It's like the rich merchant's kids that's, connected and everything's paid for by his dad and he doesn't have to do anything and he's a complete shit. And he likes Fayne, but she tolerates him.
Right.
And
that's you picked up on something there that I hope people continue to follow. Is there's something about Fayne and her, the way that she interacts with almost everybody.
It was set in book 2.
Right.
By Trent.
Yes.
Everybody likes her. And because she treats everybody the same. She doesn't treat people badly. She looks for, Caleb's a little shit. She knows that. And she knows he's a little dick. But she still tries to be nice to him and tries to treat him normally.
As hard as it is.
Yeah. As much as she wants to throttle him. So Trent does this. You have this huge test and duel between him and Caleb, Trent and Caleb, and Trent's obviously the better. And Caleb paid basically. You think Caleb's the one who paid them off to accept him, and you find out later in the second book it was his family, dad or whatever. But he gets paid to be the apprentice for the guild because they only choose. And
hey, my dad actually just asked Ron Newman, just asked if I'm drinking rum and coke, and he should already know the answer. Yes, I am. Okay. Sorry.
That's a silly question, Ron.
I know, Dad. Come on.
But so the whole thing is said and done, and Caleb becomes the apprentice, and kind of doesn't sit right with Fayne. The injustice of it doesn't sit right with her. Bothered by it. And Trent kind of just moves on, even though he's super disappointed. He kind of just accepts that he got screwed over and he can't do anything about it.
I want there to be a little bit of balance there's actually 3 friends. And I think Aaron just hasn't mentioned Bex yet. Who happens? She's one of my favorites to write. But yeah, she's fun. But there's a bit of a balance in the personalities between Fayne and Trenton. And where he feels like, or he seems like he's way laid back and just letting it go.
But
more will come from that soon.
He's not really one to you think in the book that he just lets it go, but it really just sits there. He kind of just lets it sit there. Kind of not necessarily that he accepts it, but he just can't do anything about it at the moment. So he can't really do anything. And Fayne, meanwhile, is that she is stewing on that for a while.
For a minute, yeah.
And so, they have this, it's called the Bounty, and it's a celebration of the town and everything and everybody and what you're thankful for. And so everybody goes to the tavern where Uncle Dimitri is probably already and they go and they drink and be thankful. And she gets cornered by Caleb, and Caleb's a little shit. And basically admits to her that they got paid off for him to be in the guild. And it just lit her fire, and she just did not sit well. And so she goes and tells Trent, and they go and they want to confront Caleb, and they go to find him, and they overhear him talking to his mentor, and I can't pronounce his name, so I'm gonna let you pronounce his
name. Okay, his actual name is Dunai Velaroth.
Okay, I knew Velaroth, but I couldn't. Yeah, I didn't want to.
No, you're good. That's one of the things I might need to put a pronunciation key at the beginning or end of my books. I don't know. I play with the words a lot. But his name's Dunai Velaroth, and they call him the Red Man.
Yeah, and because he's red, and he comes from an ancient people that used to rule half of the realm. Then they kind of didn't forgive everybody for not letting them rule half the realm forever. So they're very hateful. And so he uses Caleb, and they overhear him talking about a mask. And they can hear that, Caleb's kind of being manipulated into going and finding it. So they kind of just let them go, and they go and tell her uncle. And nobody believes Uncle Dimitri drunk. So nobody ever believes the stories he tells, even though everything he says is completely true. So they tell him, and he kind of just laughs it off, and then kind of like ignores it, and then drinks, and they kind of, from there, she's determined to, well, she goes and makes her next deliveries, and she finds out that Caleb bought a cloak to go. So
traveling cloak.
Yeah, traveling cloak.
And supplies to go on a trip. Yeah.
He's basically looking for this really powerful mask, and so she knows that he's going to do it. And so she gets her friend Bex and Trent together, and book 1 closes with them following and making this plan to follow Caleb. And it's the way you just end the novels is very well, because you're kind of just like, well, thanks. I got the other one.
Gotta love that cliffhanger, right?
Oh God, I hate
cliffhanger. You have specialized in the cliffhanger. Like you're like, son of a bitch.
Nice.
I'm still. Excuse me. I'm waiting for Uncle Dimitri to turn into Uncle Eero from what you call it, Aang the Airbender. I'm waiting for. I'm hoping it's gonna happen.
I just like Uncle Dimitri so much.
I mean, that's what Eero was tea drinking, just not alcohol. But I mean, it's roughly the same.
Yeah, I mean, the poor guy, like
later on.
He's so much older, but at 15 years old, he was kind of like thrown in this situation where it was just ridiculous.
He was thrown in the type of situation that you're either going to make it and be a broken drunk because there's not much option, or you're not going to make it. Yeah. Those are your choices. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's kind of where he was. And then so Ethan, Mary just corrected you. So you know.
Iroh. Oh, Jesus Christ. I know it's pronounced Eero. Uncle Iroh. No, Uncle Iroh, sorry.
You're right, Ethan.
Iroh, sorry. Oh, but since we're talking about drinks, Lead Slingers, Black Flag, rum.
Ooh, I love that rum. You know that the liquor store here still doesn't have it.
I can get it here.
They don't sell it in Maryland either.
And it's actually a really good rum. I really enjoy that rum. It's one of my favorites because it doesn't taste terrible.
Good reason.
Doesn't taste terrible.
It doesn't. Some rum, like when you drink it, you're just like, your eyes start to water because it's like fire water. It's like cold. It's just bad.
No.
It might be just a cheap rum. I mean, I don't know. But so then book 2 starts off with. Here's the spoiler, guys, because it's really good. Book 2 starts off with.
David, if you're listening, jump away. We're about to discuss book 2.
No, don't jump away. Just take it.
Spoilers for book 2 are coming right now, so David, run.
We're giving him like 5 more seconds to run away. So book 2 starts with Dimitri, and once again you have a flashback of Dimitri and Fayne traveling, and Kraken does suck. It's terrible. It's a flashback of them traveling and escaping, and Dimitri's got this like I want to say seeping wound, because that's pretty much how I can just like envision how his wound would look after not being taken care of across.
You're not wrong. Just wrapped in whatever rag he could find.
Yeah. And so but he takes a cloak and he still finds a way to pay people, so, and they travel and they're trying to stay away from everything, and they come upon this inn. They go inside the inn, and there's these two drunkards, huge guys from the way you described them. But I mean, he's a 15-year-old kid, so anybody, I mean, they're huge.
Well, one of them is for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so they automatically see that he's, they could probably, hurt him and, take whatever he has if he has anything, or just beat him up or whatever they feel like doing.
Whatever ne'er-do-wells do.
Yeah. And whatever drunkards do when they're mean. They're mean drunks, basically.
Mm-hmm.
Cruel. And so they come after him and they see that he has the 2-year-old girl, and that doesn't stop them. And what stops them is the innkeeper holds a crossbow up and tells them to leave. And they get upset because, they're his best customers. So, but he saves them, and the innkeeper sees something, and he gives them free food and water and a place to stay. And he asks them honestly, like, what, where are you running from? And, Dimitri notices, like, he has to be honest. The guy gave him free food and a place to stay. So he tells him the truth. And he kind of gets offended because the guy's not familiar with the King of Kings or, the King of Dragons.
Right. So at that point, I use the stories, these little vignettes to kind of help explain to the reader a little bit of what's going on in the world.
Mm-hmm.
And so the Oranmore, like you said, is the king of all men.
Mm-hmm.
And man has kind of expanded so rapidly as far as the races go.
Yeah.
And as you read, you'll learn there are 4 high races: the elves, the dwarves, man, and dragons. Man having the shortest lifespan of those high races, kind of spread. The others almost look at them like, cockroaches.
Yeah.
They're short lifespan, but they spread really fast, kind of thing.
Yeah.
So the Oranmore's kingdom actually spread so far that he had to put other, like, lords or whatever, in charge of other lands to delegate out. And what happens is the further they get away from him, the less real he became over time.
Yeah. Yeah. And that makes sense because it seemed like, because there were other kingdoms, but then there were like you said, like parts of the kingdom that were so far away these people didn't even know. And you hear that people are hearing about the horde attacking and spreading and all this stuff, and they're kind of in a panic. And then he's there with the innkeeper, and he tells them what's going on, and his wife Stella dresses his wound and puts a salve on it to help heal it, and gives him an eye patch, and they stay the night. And you can tell from it, like, while he's there, that he's definitely fond of this little girl. Yeah, I mean, they're all they have of each other now. So he leaves the next morning, and the innkeeper gives him more food to travel. And while they're traveling, they come across those 2 drunkards from the inn who want to attack him, and he knows that he has to fight them. And then all of a sudden, something attacks them. He just gets on the horse and books it. And they just take off, and this thing starts chasing them, and it's all you know are the yellow eyes, and it looks like a werewolf. Is basically how you can. It's the only way to describe it.
Absolutely, yeah, you're right on track.
And this huge werewolf's chasing them, and it's coming down on them, and they finally escape, and they end up running into gypsies. And the gypsies heard it, so they're scared that it's following them, but they're all none of them want to, like, stop to find out. So that's where it cuts off, and then book 2 starts. And it's this group of 3 friends who travel, and they come upon this. I don't even know if it's like a house or a mansion, or it's not even a castle. It's just a structure.
It's kind of an old manor, if you will.
Yeah, manor, like, it's just a structure. And there's this man that lives there, and his name is Jasper, who is Jasper the Wanderer, which he hates. Don't call him that.
Because to wander is to be aimless.
Yeah, because Wanderer, and I absolutely like Jasper.
He's
Jasper is phenomenal.
Absolutely one of my favorites to write.
Um,
And when we make the movies, I have Paul Bettany in mind when I write him.
yes.
Right?
That's awesome. Yes.
There we go.
Oh, that is amazing. I'll never think of anybody else while I read that now.
Yes.
He's so phenomenal. Like Jasper is such a good character. Like you know him so well because he's so weird. He counts the steps, has the old like glasses, and they're like glasses that have magnifiers and like
right.
what animated movie? There's an animated movie that has that. I can't remember what it is. It's gonna bother me. I'm gonna have to research it.
I'm gonna let the cat out of the bag. And honestly, that whole head contraption when he first opens the door, that whole scene where he sees Trenton with the glasses on was inspired and almost mimicked by when Marty McFly knocked on Doc Brown's door when he went back in time.
That's what it is. That's what it reminded me of. Okay. Yes. I'm like, I know I've seen it before. It was so good.
There it is. Yeah.
And so he's living in this mansion, and it's actually travelers. It's a den of where travelers used to go and stuff like that. It's Flex.
The Trailblazers.
Trailblazers.
And what you'll learn is that's an ancient order of explorers. Yeah. That their whole purpose is to gather knowledge, and
that's exactly what he does.
And there's only a handful left.
And there is stuff everywhere. It's like it's a hoarder's like dream come true. So bad. Like I can picture it in my mind, and it just gives me anxiety, like trying to like navigate that. But he's very eccentric, and you find out he's friends with Fayne, and you're like, how did you meet him? She tells the story of how they met, and he talks to them, and he's talking to them, asking them why they're going, and she calls Caleb her friend, and that's what struck Jasper the most because he asked Trent about it later, and they have this conversation about Fayne, and she still calls him a friend even though he's not a true friend. And Jasper, kind of threatens Trent and like, you better bring her home, like in one piece. And so they stay the night. Jasper tells them, and they tell him that they're looking for this mask by the Vilka. Is that it?
Yes.
The Vilka, which are not werewolves.
No.
But they're humanoid dog people. I guess that's the best way to describe it.
Yep. It's the concept of beastmen, basically.
Yes.
They're a half one creature, half human-ish.
Yes.
So that creature is dog.
And there's a whole thing saying they are not werewolves.
So it's like the kangaroo people from Tank Girl.
Yes, that's it. Good pull. Very good pull.
All right, Ethan. Way to go.
Now we're going to get an Ice-T kangaroo character.
Oh, yeah.
So, and he's telling them this story, and it's, I forget what it's called, the Mask of Howling Winds?
The Mask of the Howling Storm.
Howling Storm. Mask of the Howling Storm.
It's only the title of the book. It's okay.
I had a ton of notes, and I left them in the bedroom because I had all these notes so I can remember.
Right on.
So, of course, like most myths and legends, it gets twisted over time, and it's actually a story that they're told. It's the warrior wears this mask and he has unlimited power, and the mask of unlimited power is made by a sorceress, and like most things, women are the cause of shit happening.
Always, man. Always.
And so that's what Caleb's going to find. So they ask Jasper, because Jasper had spent a long time traipsing through the Batar or Batur.
Yes.
Sure.
Either way is fine. It's Batur, but yeah.
Batur Forest.
Yep.
Which is like the forest where deadly stuff goes to hang out and kill other deadly stuff, and it's basically just more deadly stuff killing other deadly.
It is the fantasy trope of the dark forest, but I wanted to make it, it's the dark forest that the dark forests are afraid of, kind of thing.
Exactly. It's like the forest where even the bad guys don't want to go.
Right.
And so he has to go into this forest and find this mask with the Vilka, who are living in the forest, who hate humans, by the way, which is a whole nother story. They hate humans, and so they have to go find Caleb because he's making a huge mistake. And so they go and Jasper talks to Trent, and they have this kind of deep conversation about Fayne and what's going on, and he gives them a map and supplies and stuff so they could take off. Well, obviously Trent is lieutenant because he got lost.
Yeah.
All lost in the woods.
Can't spell lost without LT.
Exactly. Trent is lieutenant. And they end up next to a goblin war party or like hunting party.
Yeah, hunting party.
So they get attacked by goblins. And these goblins are like, way you describe them, they're kind of badass. Like,
they are nasty. Like, I think one of my favorite sentences I've ever written is the beginning of that chapter where it says, and I've memorized it because I love it so much. If malice had form, it would take the shape of goblins. That's
actually a very good description. Like a very good description of them. Because I mean, I really like the way you describe this war party. Really need to read it because it is so good, and the handprints and all, like, they're just, most people don't think goblins are scary. Like when you have Lord of the Rings, the goblins, they're kind of like, they were scary, but the orcs were scary.
Right.
The Orcai were scary. Those guys were scary, but these goblins, like, they kind of were like the same. They were almost as scary as the Orcai. And
they're little, but they're feisty, man.
Well, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So they have this like fight, and all of a sudden these goblins are just being destroyed by something. Huge beast man comes into play and kind of just, and his name is it Canaan or Canaan? Canaan comes in, and he's a young Vilka.
What?
Young Vilka.
Yes.
I feel Russian when I say Vilka. Like, I feel like I should start having a Russian accent when I say it.
And the oh god, how's it pronounced? I gotta look up the word, or not pronounced. I gotta look it up. It's another V word. Oh, I don't think we've got. Yeah.
Velaroth.
Yeah.
Velaroth. Yeah, I feel like I'm Russian when I say those names, like those
those
words. Like,
I can't even remember which one. I looked up. Google's your friend when you're writing, man.
Oh,
and
yeah.
I was looking up the word wolf or werewolf or something like that, and Vilka is derivative of, I believe it's like Lithuanian word for wolf.
That makes sense then, because it's very like, I feel like I should read the rest of the story like with a Russian accent when I say Vilka.
Because in Bator Forest, wolves find you.
And he doesn't say much.
The dark forest, that's kind of the area.
Like most Russians, he doesn't say anything other than "follow me." Like,
right.
You're coming with me. Like, you have no choice. You're coming with me. Take them to the Vilka village to meet the chieftain. Go with your dad.
And but yeah, dark forest. Yeah, that's sort of like
totally
is like grim. And that's all German, Lithuania, that Slavic Scandinavia area, so that fits in for Lithuania.
Yeah, it does. It's and so he takes him to this village, and it's the chieftain, and this chieftain, very harsh, very old world, kind of almost like, think of an old world Russian who's like, oh no, we don't like anybody. Wants him killed immediately because he doesn't like humans because of the issues they had. And
they're outsiders, right?
And they just he's very They came in with weapons, so kill them. You know, and they're like, wait a minute, man, wait a minute. We don't want anything to do with you. We just want to find this mask. And he laughs at them because the mask's been lost for so long. He was like, you're never gonna find it because they were the ones that hid it. And so Kanan convinces them to let them continue their journey. And so the chieftain's like, okay, and just kind of throws them off to the woods, but then doesn't give them any of their stuff. So he's like, here's your horses and your lizard. Here you go. By the way, you don't get any of your swords, any of your food. You don't get anything. You just get to go. And tells them that it's like, what, a day's ride from their village?
Something like
so
that, yeah.
They go.
I know.
And they see a symbol. They argue about whether the symbol is, the right symbol or whatever, and they decide that it's not, so they go the other direction.
Right.
They get lost.
So those symbols are important because it's the first time you mentioned them, but in the book, I promise I tell about them before.
Yes, the symbols are very important.
Right. Jasper's sect, his group of the Trailblazers, they would mark their paths and things so that when other Trailblazers came by, they knew what was around. It's very, if you Google hobo street signs or street graffiti, hobo street graffiti, it's kind of that's what inspired that. So they have all these symbols that mean different things.
Okay.
And that's what you found out when Trenton realized he was lost.
Yeah.
The symbols didn't. He was orientating the map, and it wasn't matching up to the symbols.
Correct. And the symbols all mean something important.
Right.
As they find out, because they end up being in this area that has killer vines and spiders. So they're trying to fend off
symbols. I think of Willem Dafoe. Symbolism.
And yes, Eli, that's a solid quote. The Goblin Slayer. Exactly.
Right.
So they have all these vines and these spiders attacking, and Kanan rescues them. And he rescues them, and then he heals Trent, and he has a conversation with Fayne, and he brought all of their stuff. But in doing so, he is exiled from his pact almost.
He basically knew that by doing that he couldn't go back.
Yeah, because he defied the chieftain so many times. And he
snuck the stuff out. He's more new school in his thinking as far as let's open ourselves up.
More specifically, he likes Jasper. He's friends with Jasper. So, and he'd been following these people, this group of 3 friends the whole time. And meanwhile, Bex, who I'm going to tell you right now, you have to read the book because Bex is hilarious. She's the smart-ass friend who eggs Trent and Fayne on. Like, she just talks shit and she pokes at them. And she's so funny. But she is loyal, like absolutely loyal. And so Kanan rescues them and heals Trent, and he basically tells her, like, I believe in you, I believe in humans. You have to find Caleb, and they're super close to Caleb. So they wait and they let Trent heal, and then they keep going, and they finally see some clue that they're on the right track because they see a piece of Caleb's tunic or just something from him. And they're about to run into this clearing. It's like this, and the only way I can describe it is there's this dark forest all around and then this like beautiful clearing, and it's like got the sun shining on it, and it's like this clearing. And they're about to run into that, and Kanan just like grabs him and he's like, no. And this beautiful deer buck comes out, and he's so majestic, and he's running across, and all of a sudden the griffin comes down and just snatches him up. I could just imagine everybody's face,
like the people who have the pet rabbit and it's hopping out like, oh, in the video too, like watch the rabbit,
yeah.
And that damn eagle or hawk comes under it, snatches the rabbit and flies off.
Yeah, and that's exactly what it was. Like this, and it's like griffins. You think of griffins so powerful and stuff, but this one was more dark and kind of like almost like griffins. I don't know if they're really good or evil, but this one was
kind of more primal. Like out, not It's not groomed. It's not a domestic griffin. It's
has pieces of his last kill all over him and stuff. Like, you could
matted
describe
fur.
the forest, it's probably the griffin. The griffin kind of is a good representation of the forest. Like, absolutely the best representation of the forest. Pieces of, like, its last kill all over him and matted down and just nasty. So he snatches the deer, and they're all kind of like, oh, okay, yeah, we'll go around. Well, we'll just stay in the woods. No big deal. And so they find out there's a goblin party coming after Caleb. And they kind of come up to it. Like, they I guess, not really meet up with it, but they catch up with the goblins, I guess. Is that a good way to describe it? And it's the goblins that they encountered the first time. So it's super bloody. And Trent sees Caleb, so he takes off, and and the whole group's like, yeah, you go follow him, and we'll take care of the goblins. And Kanan's fighting what is his name? I don't know if it's Goblin Leader would be, but
yeah, of that war, the hunting party, yes, is Bulk, Rot Gut, or Rotmouth.
Rotmouth.
Yeah, Bulk, Rotmouth.
So Kanan's fighting him, and because he's coming after Fayne, and like she's busy, and he goes after Trent, and so he's like him and her just lock eyes, and they're like nodding, they're just like, he's like, go, we'll take care of this. So she goes and she follows Trent. They come upon this area. Can't find Trent. She sees Caleb, and Caleb's talking to her. And Caleb is twisted. He's dark. There's nothing. His mentor has twisted his mind so much and used the jealousy and dislike and everything that he has. And he tells her how he hates his parents, and it's torture being with Belleroth, and and Belleroth constantly telling him he's not good enough and he shouldn't have won. And so he's really, really twisted. He's a twisted person. And she notices he's no longer the same person. And he goes and he wants her to find this mask. And this tree is this beautiful oak tree with pink leaves, which now the cover of your book makes total sense. Because I'm looking at the cover of the book and I'm like, well, that's awesome, because that's exactly how, you would think. And so he wants her to find this mask, and she can't find it. So she's telling him, like, I can't find it. She checks the inscriptions. She's like, I can't find it. I don't see it. And Trent knocks him out. So they're going around, and her and Trent they agree to find this mask, and they're holding hands, and then basically, like, the tree it's almost like it unlocks.
Yeah.
And she ends up being lifted, and she finds the mask. And the key to the mask, Kanan reads the inscription, is basically 2 hearts as one have to find the mask. That's really a bastard of the quote, but basically 2 hearts as one have to find the mask. And they find the mask. And I'm not going to tell you the story behind the mask because you read the book, but it's a love story. It's a true love story. And the mask was made to protect the warrior, and he kind of just lost his shit and killed a bunch of people, and then realized he did, and gave the mask up for it to be hidden from him.
Right.
And so they decide to give the mask back to the Velka, which allows Kanan to be taken back into the tribe or the pack or however their structure is, but he's taken back because they find the mask, which blows the chieftain's mind, obviously, because they're going to live.
Right.
And then the end of the book is them going home and realizing, oh shit, our parents are probably going to freak out. And it closes with them riding up. Well, they encounter Belleroth to give Caleb to him, and Belleroth's absolutely pissed. And so he basically threatens them, but they ride up to Fayne's house, and all of the families are standing there. And they're all just kind of like, well, shit. And that's how
basically, that's how it ends, yeah.
And you're kind of just like, well, okay. Thanks a lot. I need book 3. I need you to hurry.
I am working on it, and I'm super amped about it.
How many books is this going to be? Is it going to be more than 3?
So yeah, it's going to be an ongoing series. So basically, until I run out of stories, it's going to be books. For now, this story arc, and when I say this story arc, you keyed in on the prologues and how they're flashbacks and everything. So this story arc is clearing up that initial prologue story.
Okay.
And as it progresses, the prologues and the current timeline are going to come together and make sense.
Okay.
And that's going to take place. So that's going to take place over 5 books.
Okay.
Okay. Cool. Well then, they're so good. They're just, you really could nail the cliffhanger.
I appreciate that.
When I finished reading it, I almost felt like I was reading a DM's story for D&D. I'm not a big D&D person, but that's how I felt when I finished. Because it was really good. And it wasn't normal, but I just really like the way the pace was set, but I really like the flashbacks, which is killing me because I really want to know how they ended up where they are with the people, because she has a mom and a dad. So right. I'm curious as to how that happened. Like, I really can't wait to read like how she ends up where she's at and who they end up with.
So some questions will be answered in the next book. But you'll probably leave with more.
Yeah.
By the end. And this is really trippy hearing you tell me both books back, because nobody's ever actually done that yet. Like, here's your story and here's how I read it. And I can't tell you how much I appreciate that. That's really cool. Because what it's telling me is I did it right. Because everything that you said is exactly what I wanted you guys to get when I'm writing it.
I'm glad, because it was a really fun set of books to read so far, and I'm really excited for the next ones. And I really like your world that you created. The realm. I like the forest. It kind of makes you want more, though. It definitely makes you want to more know about the Velka and more know about how Dimitri and Fayne got where they are.
Good.
Did the Aaron Moore survive with his dragon? And, like, where's the Horde? Because, they were all
coming. Yeah.
And,
I like the 2 pages into the book, the elves have left.
Yeah.
Right?
If anybody
I haven't touched on that yet, but the elves peaced out in book 1 at the beginning. So
anybody knows fantasy elves, my D&D group jokes, I always say real life elves. Like, most elves in fantasies are based on Tolkien style elves, where they're 6 foot tall, strong,
right,
super fast, superior pretty much, in all shapes and forms. So, and it was funny. I was just thinking, if I'm the king and the strongest warriors in the land just fucking left, shit.
First of all, the elves left. Shit's bad when the elves are like,
the time of man has come. No, not the time of man. Not the time of man.
I'm like, wait a minute. At least in Lord of the Rings, they didn't leave the first book. Like, it got real.
Got real fast. So.
Yeah.
I will tell you, not all of the elves are gone.
Okay.
Just a little teaser there. Not all of the elves are gone. I don't like extremes. I don't like absolutes. Let's put it that way. Extremes, I don't like absolutes. So.
Not a Sith.
Oh, what's that?
Yeah, I don't like absolutes, so I had a really fun character come into mind.
Okay. I'm excited.
You're gonna learn.
Characters so far are really good. I'm gonna tell you right now, Jasper and Bex, I'm a big fan of supporting characters who are really, really good. They are really, really fun supporting characters.
Well, to me, every character is important to the story.
Exactly.
Otherwise, why write them? So if they occupy space on my page, I've put a lot of thought into each character.
Sometimes you get supporting characters that just like they're there, and you're
Suicide
kind of
Squad. What?
Yeah.
Movie, yes. Comics, no.
Exactly. Yeah. Movie.
Comics are all important. Movies, they just tell like, hey, wow, bam, bam. Wait, what just happened?
Killer Croc was only here to swim. I get it now.
Are there any plans to release a PNP campaign setting? That the world is really well thought out.
PNP. Okay, I told you you're gonna have to lose my nerd card. What does PNP stand for? Did we mean D&D?
Maybe.
David, help me out here.
Okay, I googled PNP. I googled PNP, and it's.
You probably shouldn't.
I don't think it's that. Like, I don't think it's Urban Dictionary's PNP. That's
okay.
Gotta look it up myself.
Oh, let me type in campaign. Follow that because we're not getting good answers.
Pen and paper. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yes.
Pen and paper. Okay.
Yes. I would be absolutely thrilled. So
that's actually kind of. I've never played D&D my whole life. I've never played. My friends are trying to get me to play.
Yeah.
I really like the idea of the stories and stuff like that, and you dictating. And I really like it. It's fascinating. A pen and paper game with this realm would actually be super cool.
So I've actually adapted some of the D&D games that I played. I taught my kids how to play D&D.
Nice.
So
I think I saw your Christmas pictures.
Yeah.
I'm not a stalker. We're friends on Facebook. It's cool.
It's all good.
Total stalker. Don't let her lie. She's a total stalker.
And your kids were playing D&D. That's really awesome.
Yeah. My son asked a couple years back. He was like, "Hey, let's play D&D," and like I started to weep, and my heart grew 3 sizes that day. And yeah, so I grabbed like my stack of books off of the shelves and was like, "Boom, let's learn!" And we spent hours creating characters and then playing. And the girls, little girls, fell in love with it. My 15-year-old daughter still won't play, but 15-year-old girls are too cool for everything.
Catherine says Luke knows what player I'd call. So what player would she call?
I'm gonna give you a name, and the name is Kiara, but I'm gonna leave it at that.
Okay, I don't think Kiara has been introduced.
You haven't met Kiara yet.
Okay, I was like,
that's not fair. Now I want to know who Kiara is. Dang it. I think I would be Bex. I would totally rock Bex.
Bex is fun. She's just fun. She's that voice that as I'm writing and I'm but as I'm writing and I'm trying to keep it in the fantasy realm. You know, keep it in kind of high fantasy, and they should talk a certain way. Then Bex can come out and say things like, you know, he's cute, my brown ass, you know?
Yeah.
She can say stuff like that. So she's my fun voice that can kind of bring in some of the real world.
Jasper Jasper describes where she's from. Because Jasper's been everywhere. So he describes where he's from, where Bex is from, like to a T. And he does it in such a way. It's almost like somebody who's socially awkward is very blunt about their surroundings and they just tell the truth because they don't understand that it's not allowed. Almost like kids, like children, like young children who describe other people because they just they don't think any other way. It's not to mean any harm. It's just to literally describe that person. And he does it, and she kind of just at first she's kind of like, wait, what the hell? And then she ends up they engage, and she ends up liking him.
Because despite all of his awkwardness, he's kind of a charming dude. So
yeah, he's kind of even Trent, who's kind of like, well, you know, and Trent likes him, and
yeah,
can't help but not like him. Like he's just a likable guy, and because he's honest, but not in a way that's any harm. Just honest.
Right. It's almost, I don't know, if we had to diagnose him, he might have a
autistic,
slight bit of Asperger's, maybe. Yeah.
That's honestly, when I read it, that's how I envisioned him, because not like, I would say on the spectrum, just because they don't have an understanding of social norms or social interactions, and they kind of just speak how they are, and like,
right. And that's how he is. He's absolutely not social. Like,
and they focus on what makes them happy, and that's him wearing his 30 goggles and drawing maps that Trent can't follow.
Right. His maps are good. Trenton sucks.
No, his maps are good. He's good. Trent, not so much.
Right. But to add real quick, to go back to that question, I would love to do a pen and paper like campaign setting for that. It's highly influenced by Dungeons and Dragons and the Pathfinder role playing game. I love.
And I could tell that just from, I've never played. I could tell just like the influence. It's not like overwhelming, I guess. It lets it tell its own story, but you can tell that it's definitely there in the way that you tell the story almost.
Well, the concept for introducing you guys to the rest of the world is the fact that Fayne and Bex and Trenton have never left their city. Yeah. So as they learn about the world, so do you.
Exactly. You don't know anything else.
Right.
You only know the flashbacks. You only know of the flashbacks. But in honest, like, you haven't described the world. Like, we don't know the way the world works. We find out when they find out.
Right. And you're going to learn a lot more. I will tell you, book 3 takes place entirely within the city of Ambiers. They don't leave their town. But book 3 is also as long as book 1 and 2 put together, if not longer.
Cool.
There's a lot more to it. I'm starting to get a little more in depth. I'm excited
for that, because I'm not gonna lie, I like to read. I'm a fairly quick reader for something. If I enjoy the story, I read.
Sure.
I read both books in the matter of the day.
Yeah. They are pretty quick.
I'm gonna have to read them again, because I'm gonna have to make sure that I read them again so I can read book 3. And
there was a technical, literally a technical publishing reason why the first book was as short as it was. But the first publisher had a page limit, honestly, is why it had to get cut off where it got cut off.
I kind of like it that way. It was really
sets a tone.
But I liked it.
It sets a tone, like how it's cut off, not like the short distance, but the what you call it, the way you cut it off.
Yeah, it definitely did.
Right.
It definitely, it gave you just enough, and then it was like, okay, here we go. Here's the rest of it, and it was really, even with the shortness of the book, it was still really good.
Good. I appreciate that.
Luke, they were phenomenal reads. I love it, and I really want people to read this, and this is why we do this. This is why we do this book club, because I want, one, it makes me read stuff I probably would normally never read. I'll be honest.
Yeah.
And I read a Warhammer book. I've never read a Warhammer book ever.
Right.
I read your fantasy novels, which I'm there now. I'm excited for when they come out. I want to read more. I need more. And I read Allison's book, which was a fantasy novel. This book club pushes people to read something they don't normally read.
Right.
Or learn about something. But also, my biggest thing is, Luke is a nerd. He's a DB nerd. He's a DB. Self-publishing author. And I want to push our authors. These are our people. Like, this is the nerds. This is our people. We need to push them.
I love that. And I mean, we really appreciate it. I will tell you now, any author you get on here is going to completely appreciate it. It's the best thing ever. But I also want anybody who is thinking, I want to write a book, or I've been working on a book, I just don't know if anyone will read it. So what? Put it out there. Eventually people will read it.
Yes.
It took me we're going into my 3rd year of publishing these. And I finally got onto a platform like this. Because I didn't quit. I just kept putting the stories out there. And every chance I got, I pushed myself. I promoted myself and I put it out there. My point is, if I can do it, anybody can do it. That's so cliche to say, but it's true. 42 years old. I've had an entire life behind me.
Yeah.
If I can start new again and doing what I want to do and telling these stories at my age, anybody can do it.
I can't write. I've never been a writer, but I can read the shit out of some books, and I find it. The more I do this, the more. Nope,
okay, you guys need to meet him real quick. This is Jasper.
Hi, Jasper.
Yes, his name is Jasper, like in the book.
I would introduce my dogs, but they probably that's Archer right there.
I want to keep him so bad.
Danger zone.
But they probably would attack the monitor because Archer's not a smart man, smart dog. He attacks.
You were right both times.
He attacks the TVs.
Nice.
So, and then my German Shepherd's looking at me like, let me play with you. Here. Come on. You're not gonna come up here? No. But yeah, like the more I do this, the more I want people who just please write so we can read.
Yes.
So I can read, so I can enjoy, so I can talk about your stories because I like talking about your stories. And Luke, it was phenomenal. Your stories were great, and I
appreciate it. If
go for book 3.
If you guys are a fan of kind of dark fantasy and horror, I'm kind of tiptoeing the line between fantasy and horror in book 3.
I've never been. I have somebody who writes horror fantasy, and they message me, and I'm gonna read their book. I've never been big into horror fantasy, but I mean, the one book I read kind of brought me into that because it was the fantasy and it was about Neferata, the vampire goddess and stuff. And it was super dark, super dark, and I really liked it. So I'm opening it up,
broadening those horizons.
Yeah, and that's why I like doing this. I love meeting authors.
So what I've done with this series is basically I've got original stories. I mean, this mask, like original concepts in my head.
Mm-hmm.
The mask, when you start to learn the story behind the Oranmore, which is coming, and the Horde, and why they're diametrically opposed and everything. Lots of original concepts from deep in here come out. Yeah. But another thing I want to do, I want to make the world feel new and interesting, but also familiar at the same time.
Yeah.
So what I do is I take some of our, and Ethan hit on it a little bit earlier. I take themes and concepts that we already know with the fairy tales and our legends and things like that, and I'm put them into my world. So when you were talking about the German influence behind the Dark Forest, you're 100% on the nose with that. Because I take these themes that we know, these fairy tales that we've been told. So book 3 starts to explore, the world is called Kafka. So it's the world of Kafka and what the boogeyman might be like in that world.
I like that.
And then a couple other things that go along with things that go bump in the night. So just to give you a teaser.
I caught that. I really like that because it's all the things that you think of in like like Allison's book was pixies and fairies and dragons and dwarves and all of those creatures. And your book's the darker creatures like the goblins and the werewolves and the Velka and the beastmen and
Right.
and who knows what else, because like the forest has so many things. The spiders, and, I'm not gonna lie, your spider scene, like, kind of chuckled because I was like, this is almost like Harry Potter, but this is like rated R Harry Potter. Like Harry Potter rated R.
I'll take it.
But it was so good, and it's just it's a very well done world. I can't wait to read it.
I love developing the world. With Fayne's world, what I have so far, it's basically her area, the region that she's in, is called the Central Kingdoms. There's 7 kingdoms in that area.
Yeah, and so you don't talk and that's like,
it's all gonna come, I promise.
It's going to be.
But just so you know how much I put into this and develop it, there's 7 kingdoms in that, but that's 1/4 of the map.
Yeah.
So there's so much, like I said, the series is going to go until I run out of stories.
So did you, when you thought of this, when you came up with this idea of this world, did you write it out and did you draw it out and did you
I have a map.
Okay, because that's why I was asking, because it's so detailed. And that's what I find as somebody who, that's just, in my mind, that's fascinating, because you have this entire world that you created. How long did it take you to create the world before you wrote the book, or did you kind of do it at the same time?
A lot of it happens at the same time. The core of the world, though, magic and the rules of magic, Catherine Poach, she's popping in on here, making a bunch of comments. I see you, Kathy.
I like her. She's fine.
I know, she's fun. She helped me develop the world, and
I can tell because she's giving me little hints. And she's killing me right now.
I know, I love her. So she helped me develop it. We probably talked about this world for, she might correct me if I'm wrong, but probably at least a year and a half, 2 years before we wrote the first words. And Kathy actually sent me an outline for the prologue to the first book.
Oh, okay.
And then I wrote it out and took it from there. But without her help, for back and forth, back and forth over the internet, which I absolutely love the internet. Fun fact: I've never met Kathy face to face.
Really?
We've known each other for a long time, and we used to co-write on a sci-fi fan website. This guy was creating this sci-fi world, and they had a fiction section, and she and I would write, and my title on that site became the chief archivist. So I was in charge of basically writing all the fiction for it and organizing the fan fiction for it. And that's where she and I met, and then we kept in touch and continued the writing relationship, the creative relationship off of that site. And we decided to go into
Team Dystopia.
That's what it was called. And then we started to go into the fantasy. I said, let's explore dragons and all of that. And it developed from there. We spent a couple years developing the world, and then we started with the prologue, and I took it from there. She blessed off, said, "You take it, go," and I did.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and it's
good job, Kathy. Good job.
Yeah, and I still run things by her. Like, okay, so what about this? And she's usually first or second look at my work after I've written it. Yeah, and
she gets the spoilers.
She does get the spoilers. She's already read most of what I've got for book 3, so she knows what's happening, and you guys don't. Haha. Yeah, I know, right? But
Well,
yeah, I love developing. You said something that I try to keep in mind as I write. You said it's really detailed, and it makes you want to keep reading. What I like about how you said that is that I like that it feels because I like that it feels that way to you because I sometimes feel like I gloss over the detail too much. So what I like to do is give you enough detail that it feels
like,
real.
Some people, like Spoken is a prime example of this. He gives so much detail that you want to poke your eyes out because you're like, okay, I don't need 20 pages of what the character looks like right now. I just need, and you give enough detail without being too much because sometimes it's just too much and it's too much to read and you're like scrolling through and you're like, okay, well, scrolling if you're on Kindle, but if you're in the book, you just kind of keep looking like, okay, God, get over this. Like, I don't need to read all this, but it's enough without being too much.
Well, our minds are really powerful things. Our brains are really powerful things, and they fill in a lot. So I give you the details that you need because you need to know that Bex has Fayne has the really dark hair, light blue eyes, and that, how she looks. Beyond that, you can fill in how she sounds. I don't care how she talks in your head, as long as you get the words right. So, yeah.
But the thing is the way when you describe her, you can imagine her talking in your head because of the way you described her. You don't need to describe her voice. You don't need to describe most of her, other than her actions and the way she thinks about stuff. It allows you to have her in your mind, and you can do that without all of the extra 30 words, and and it's really well done. Great,
I appreciate that.
Yeah. But so I could talk to you all night about this book. I loved it. I thought it was great.
Thank you.
I'm so glad that you were on, Luke, and I would love to continue to support you and your work, and you were just I love it. It's fantastic.
Well, watch the Nerd site, and I'll be letting you know when it's coming out.
Yes, definitely. And for everybody, I want you to write stuff so we can have you on here, so we can read it and have you join us and we can share. And I thank you for coming.
Thank you for having me. You guys are awesome.
Love having you. So, Luke, before we started, when we were bullshitting around, you were talking about fantasy genre.
Yeah.
Like a dying breed now.
Okay, yeah, we did touch on that. What are you asking me to continue?
Yeah,
keep going a little bit.
Also, I wanted that to come into this as well.
Right on. Fantasy. It's how I started. We were talking before, and I know I said I don't know if it was on air or beforehand, but I dabbled a lot in sci-fi before I published these fantasy books. But I started with the fantasy. The Lord of the Rings, The Hobbit, you remember the original animated Hobbit movie?
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, that there was an old anime called Record of Lodoss War. I don't know if it's a series, and it's fantasy. It's high fantasy. They're the elves with the long pointed, is that World of Warcraft pointed ears and ElfQuest style elves and everything?
Okay.
Yeah. So that's where my heart has always been, is the idea of dragons and elves and dwarves and that kind of thing. What I had said in our pre-interview conversation was, it feels like, as a fantasy author, it feels like the fantasy genre is dying as far as books go. And that's coming from going to the bookstore and trying to find an original story, good fantasy story that hasn't been told yet. but it's also coming from the technical author side. I get stats on, like, not books. Well, I get stats on my book sales, but as small as mine are, you look at the number of books in Amazon. They have over 8 million books on Amazon. Then you break it down into the subcategories, and fantasy has 20, 30,000.
Mm-hmm.
And it's out of 8 million, there's a literal handful of fantasy books. And it breaks my heart. But then you get a show like Game of Thrones, and it kind of puts a fire back into people, pun not intended, to to get into the genre. And I hope that my take on it gets people, like Erin said, she doesn't read fantasy.
I think people misunderstand it.
Yeah, I think so.
I think they misunderstand it. But I think, like with like the age of nerds, that's what I'm gonna call this, the age of nerds.
Right.
Being a nerd is the cool thing now. But I was in high school, being a nerd was not the cool thing, because I played sports and I was a nerd, but I didn't let everybody know I was a nerd.
Oh, you were a double agent.
I was.
Bum, bum, bum.
Yeah. No, I think.
Okay, hold on. I have a question.
Go ahead.
You know, it became oversaturated and you got bored, as though there was only so much. And I think I'm kind of with Barry on that. Like, I feel like when Game of Thrones was released, everybody wrote about dragons.
Yep. Okay.
They rode that wave, and then like when the Lord of the, like, prime example is Lord of the Rings. When Lord of the Rings, the movies. I read Lord of the Rings as a kid, so for me that was, but I also watched the animated Lord of the Rings, which not a lot of people know about.
Right.
Like the animated Hobbit and stuff like that. Not a lot of people remember that.
Right.
I watched that. I waited for that to come on TV to watch, and it was dark. And I feel like when Lord of the Rings came out, fantasy is misunderstood. And I'm guilty of it. Like, I'm completely guilty of misunderstanding it. But now, like, do you think that's part of the issue? Was the like you said, oversaturation? Yeah,
a couple things. You hit on one where fantasy is misunderstood. So a lot of people hear fantasy and they think heavy, like you had said, chapters worth of description. Character description that's 17 pages long. How many pages can you write about the shape and color of the leaves in the forest? So they get that idea, and there are those authors out there, that we've talked about a few. But that's not the vast majority of the fantasy that's out there. The vast majority of the fantasy that's out there is that we have these really cool adventures with these monsters in our head that we need to put on the page. Mm-hmm. And we don't put them on the page. This is a bastardization of I believe it's a Neil Gaiman quote. Mm-hmm. He says, we don't write about the dragons to tell you the dragons are real. Write about the dragons to tell you that they can be defeated.
Yeah.
And I think people don't think that. They think, oh God, it's this big, long, in-depth, heavy read. And fantasy doesn't have to be a heavy read.
And that's kind of, I think that's, I'm going to tell you right now, that's a huge misconception.
Right.
Because when I first thought of fantasy, I felt like it was a super heavy read. Mm-hmm. Like, some science fiction is super heavy.
Right.
And it's so descriptive, and it's just a lot.
Exactly.
And I think that was my misconception with fantasy. Mind you, Tolkien was one of the first fantasy writers that I ever read. So there's that.
So you just jumped feet first into the deep end, but that's okay.
It was like, oh, fantasy, Tolkien.
Right.
And don't ever want to read fantasy again.
Right.
And I love Tolkien. Like, I love Tolkien.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. But I can see, and a lot of people can see how that can put you on a.
You have to be in the mood to read him,
Sure.
or you can't read it.
Sure.
And I until I was an adult, I had this misconception of fantasy of being a heavy read and being because I had him, and so it wasn't until I started doing this and I started branching out a little bit when some of the TV shows started coming out and everything, and I started reading. And when I saw TV shows come out, my first thing is if it's based off a book, I'm going to read the book first, and then I'm going to watch the show. Because in my experience, books are always better.
I was going to say, you like to set yourself up for disappointment. So.
Yeah. And I think once I started reading fantasy, I enjoyed it more because it's not super heavy.
Right.
It's pretty simple.
Right.
It's a pretty simple thing.
And I think what also goes along with that, so there's actually three things. What also goes along with that is people think they know what fantasy is. Like already, you say I write a fantasy book. Oh, you write about dragons and swords and elves and hobbits and things like that. They already have in mind that they know what your story is because they've seen The Hobbit or they've read The Lord of the Rings. What I like to think is that every author out there has a different take on it and can give you something new. So for mine, the fantasy series that I'm working on, this legendary series, you met Jasper in book 2. You love Jasper. If you were paying attention, and I'm sure you were, there's a little bit of steampunk thrown in with the traditional fantasy, with Jasper's whole get up with the eye, the goggles, and everything, and then his cane.
Okay, yeah, I got it. Yeah,
we're gonna get into more of that in book 3. You're gonna learn about a section of Ambiers called the Cogs.
Okay.
And how, as we go in throughout the series, you're going to learn how magic and science are actually starting to merge.
That makes me happy because I like when science
is Asgard.
Maybe not quite that far ahead.
Going back to the fantasy genre, do you think maybe the fantasy genre has been broken down and divided into different things? Or just
so this discussion came up in another group that I was in, and it was an authors group, and it was about the zombie genre. But the discussion and my answer can pretty much apply to any genre. So you've got zombies.
Mm-hmm.
We'll say fantasy now.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Walking Dead and then everything became zombies. Because that became the popular thing. So many people flooded the market with zombie stories. Fantasy kind of does the same thing a little bit with the Game of Thrones, Lord of the Rings movies, Hobbit movies. Then a flood of fantasy comes in, and people are going to do that. So the question was, does the market get oversaturated and people have run out of things to say?
Mm-hmm.
I think what ends up happening is, yes, that kind of happens with anything pop culture. The market saturates. I have a pit mix that does the same thing. Up in the face
my German Shepherd came out of the room.
So any genre that becomes popular becomes oversaturated, and then basically everybody says we're gonna jump on this and we're gonna tell our version of this story, to the point where it becomes very hard to tell an original story.
Yeah.
You've got your fandom that revs up, gets on it, everything is popular, and then those fans get bored with it. So it drops off again. Drops off again, but the people that drop off are the fans that jumped on when it was up here.
Yeah.
The fans who started down here on the other side stick around. So what happens is the same thing with any genre, and I'll say it with fantasy, is you get the authors who want to tell an original story, and they have an original idea or their twist on it.
Yeah.
And they stick with it, and they tell it and then somebody will pick it up. So it's kind of the wave, like anything else. It'll get picked up in a.
Yes, Twilight is a perfect example.
What's a perfect example? I'm missing things.
Twilight is a good example.
Yes. Vampires don't glitter. Team Blade all the way. So. But yeah, I think that's where, when I say that the fantasy genre is dying in books, I think a lot of that comes from I'm not seeing, of the massive amount of books that are being self-published and put out on Amazon, a literal handful is the fantasy genre.
Yeah.
Stick out more.
What's that?
You just stick out more.
I hope so.
You're looking at it like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, then you have like fanfic spin-offs like 50 Shades of Grey. Yeah. The issue, a lot of it is, now I read the Twilight series, and it wasn't, it's not terrible. It wasn't great. It wasn't terrible. The problem is like my vampires are Dracula, like Bram Stoker's Dracula. Those are my Dracula. Those are my vampires. An Interview with a Vampire.
Do they say blah blah blah?
They do say blah blah blah. Oh my god! If my kids heard that, they'd lose it. But like Lestat and those vampires, those are my vampires. And so like when you have all this stuff saturating the market for genres, it kind of ruins it almost. People are like, oh, if everything's like Twilight, then why the hell do I want to read it?
Right.
And it's like, no, read fucking Lestat. Like, read Lestat and read Interview with a Vampire. You'll like vampires because those were the cool vampires.
Right. And it's hard when it becomes so saturated to sift through the mediocre to find the gems.
Yeah.
It is. Because like you said, how many times do you want to read through Twilight to get to Lestat?
What I notice about a lot of authors now for young adults, because when we go to the book, I look for young adults for my kids, because my daughter's 10, she's about to be 11.
Jackson Pierce, by the way.
Huh?
Jackson Pierce. Young adults, does a lot of fantasy. Now she's doing like Spy Sleuth. I only speak of it personally because dated when we were kids.
Nice. I will check that out because the book they're actually getting ready to read, and they all have a project on it, is Artemis Fowl. Only because like Artemis Fowl is going to be that's their next series. And James Patterson writes young adult books like The Treasure Hunters and stuff like that. But when you go to the young adult section, it's this sounds terrible to say about young adults. It's like kids over-sexualized fantasy.
It's there.
I mean, it's there.
It's hard.
That's not what fantasy, and that's I think that's when I say misconception. That's not what fantasy is. Fantasy is not Twilight.
Right.
You know, and that's the issue. Fantasy is your books and Allison's books and like David Annandale's book that we did, you know, about Neferata. That's fantasy. His was dark fantasy, but it's fantasy.
Sure.
And that's where, for me, like I can tell you, that's where the misconception comes from. Because you see all these fantasy novels, and it's
right. I'll walk through Barnes and Noble. Yeah, I'll walk through Barnes and Noble, and I'll look what they put under fantasy, and it's.
Oh, I know.
I have to give it the side eye and be. Are you sure?
Beautiful creatures and stuff like that, and it's like.
And.
My dogs are all freaking out right now.
We start. Yeah, and I like to think of myself as, you know, a student of the craft. Sounds pretentious as shit, but I mean,
we won't hold it against you.
I like to, because I do. That's what I'm studying now. I'm studying towards getting, you know, that master's degree in fiction. So I literally took a class 2 semesters ago called anime and animation. We literally watched 7 anime films and
Oh wow.
and studied storyline and plot behind anime. So there's so much wrong with how, and this is one of the things I'm going for in my books. There's so much wrong with how female heroes are portrayed. I want Fayne to be a better example of what a female hero can be.
Yeah.
Hey, buddy. So for me, one of the things that ends up happening is either the female character loses her agency because the ultimate goal, as in Twilight, was I need to be with a man.
Yeah.
Or she is made to look stronger because the main male characters in the story are incompetent or weak or can't do anything. Yeah. So Trenton is strong. Trenton is the one with magic out of their group.
Dude, he's a freaking mage and he's really freaking good.
And yet he's not the main hero. And I need, that's super important to me because it's not because I don't want the men to look weak. It's because I want the women to look even stronger. The female characters to look even stronger by standing out against a guy who's that capable, or alongside a guy who's that capable.
And I think that's where a lot of the misconception is, because they're like, oh, female leads, they just want to be in and blah 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 blah, and it's like female leads aren't anything new in fantasy. It's never been a new thing.
Yep.
Even though in some fantasies, the women are evil, they're still very powerful people. Right. And that's where, and that's honestly, it's just the whole genre of fantasy is just it's a complete misconception with a lot of people. And I think a lot of the young adult authors today are kind of ruining it. I really wish that they couldn't call them fantasy, because it ruins the fantasy genre. Because when you think of fantasy, it's heavy and you think of a lot of people, if you were to ask probably young adults now, they would probably tell you Twilight and beautiful creatures and
right,
all the books that I see on display.
Yeah, there's a bunch of them, and it even bleeds over into the sci-fi, which there are days I have issues that they lump sci-fi and fantasy together, and then there are days I think they go hand in hand.
Oh, that'll drive. I'm not even gonna tell Levi that, because he'll come out and have a whole rant about that. That'll
right.
He's a sci-fi guy, and he likes sci-fi fantasy and all that stuff.
But that's why you'll walk down the fantasy, young adult fantasy section, and the Hunger Games are right next to Harry Potter.
Yeah.
And they're not the same at all. So it's a difficult genre to convince somebody it's worth reading.
And I think that's why this is so important, and why we feature a lot of fantasy authors. Because all of our authors have so far been fantasy. It's important because fantasy gets a bad rap, and I'm totally to blame. I didn't read fantasy because of that reason. But now that I read fantasy,
it's my favorite genre. So if I ever get to choose an author, they're going to be fantasy regardless.
Right on.
Pretty much. So now it's like, oh well, there's all that other stuff. But and it's kind of the issue, I think, and I can see why it's not. I wouldn't say dying, but more misunderstood. And
I think misunderstood is probably a better. I think misunderstood is probably a better term.
Because there are fantasy authors, but they're so, like yourself, they're so just drowned out by all of the other stuff, that doesn't represent the genre very well.
Well, I hope more platforms like you guys give authors like me a chance, because this is phenomenal. I mean, you can ask my wife. When I found out about it, I was happy dancing around the house. I'm like, oh my god, I can't believe it. And
I love it. There's another DB. There's Barry messaged me, another person who was a vet author.
Mhm.
I'm gonna try to get him in here, and I just want, like, this is your platform, and
It's awesome, and
I just want to build on it, like, just give you guys a voice.
I totally appreciate it. I do.
But I'm gonna call it. It's 10 o'clock.
Yeah.
Half before James is like, oh. And my
This has
son
been great.
wanted to make an appearance.
Well,
Nolan, our youngest.
He wins the whole show, so.
I know. He's our youngest of 6.
You can't have kids and animals. They always steal the show.
No. And our 3 dogs are super cute. So it's like.
Well, anybody who's rewatching this, run back about 45 minutes, and Aaron's dogs were like up on the counter they were looking for food. I'm really proud of myself for not pointing that out when it actually happened, but I was so distracted while you were talking.
It doesn't surprise me. Bender is my German Shepherd, and he's kind of like so mellow, but he's kind of the grumpy old man.
Nice.
And Fiona, my pit mix, and she's the queen. But she loves children, lets them climb on her and ride her and do everything, and she just loves them to death. She cuddles with them. And then Archer's our little puppy shit. He's a jerk. He's kind of like we think he's pit and boxer. We're not sure. He's the one I found on the side of the road last year.
Oh, okay.
But he annoys everybody else. So, but this one and Archer are like best friends. So
sweet.
He feeds him all the time. They ate donuts together earlier. Apparently, I didn't know, but apparently Nolan fed him donuts. Didn't you? Yeah.
Well, before we bounce, everybody, this is the paperback version right here. It's about $7 to $8 on Amazon Prime. If you have Kindle and Prime, it's free. And both paperbacks with the first and second book around $7 to $8.
And they are phenomenal.
It's a great read. Check them out. He's got book 3 coming out soon.
Yep, book 3 is coming in the spring. Stay tuned. I'm super excited about it. I'm not gonna lie, I like it more than the first 2. So.
Oh well, then I'm excited.
Yeah, and real quick before I say goodbye, my dad popped on and he said he was proud of me. I'm a big daddy's boy, so my dad said he's proud, and I could die happy right now because of that. So, all right.
That's cool. He's a good guy.
Okay. Minus the always drunk part. Demi's Uncle Demi's heart and kindness and all of that is 100% my dad. So,
Uncle awesome. Dimitri probably is going to be he's a cool character because he loves Fayne, without a doubt. The drunk uncle. I mean, you can't do anything about that.
He's a drunk uncle. And my dad is the inspiration behind him. Minus the drunk part. My dad's pretty level. But his heart and kindness and just character is my dad's character is
That's awesome.
So yeah.
Well, your dad's cool.
All right, guys. I really, really appreciate this. This has been amazing. You guys rock.
Awesome. So we're not sure when the next episode is, but it's coming soon. But thank you for joining us for this awesome night, and we'll see you guys next time.
Thanks.
Have a great time. Thanks for coming.
Good night.
Bye, guys.